Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to be in focus mode here presenting. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them into the Q&A box, ideally, because then we can get to them at periodic breaks throughout the workshop. But if you have not done this already and you're thinking about using this for yourself or your students, I'm going to drop this template into the chat box. So what you're going to do is you're going to copy this and make a copy of it for your folder or your uses. So let me show you what that looks like. This is in the chat box now. So this document, and then the instructions are on the front. If you click on that sheet, you click File, Make a Copy. And so just save this to your Google Drive, or if you don't use Google Drive, you can download it as an Excel sheet on your desktop. This is going to help you map out your ideal week for the summer. Okay, so take your time to do that. I will jump back over to the slide deck. All right, so before we jump into the educational stuff, tell us where you're logging in from. Drop it in the chat box. You see here where people are coming from. Vancouver. Wonderful. Los Angeles, welcome Elizabeth. San Anselmo, Bay Area as well, awesome. So drop it in the chat box. Where are you logging in from? And then, do you have a beverage of choice? I'm gonna grab my water here. But what is your beverage of choice? I'm sticking with water today. It's hot. It's getting hot here, and I need to stay hydrated. I did some hot yoga this morning, so I'm a little dehydrated. So hopefully you all have a beverage of choice to keep you focused as we go through. All right, so let's talk about how this framework is going to help you. So drop in the chat box, are you a parent or educator, a coach, a student? And maybe some of you are all three of those things, but drop in the chat box which one it primarily resonates with you. Are you like, mainly a student, parent? What's your kind of reason for being here? Educator and parent? Well, if wine helps, Katrina, that's okay too. Sometimes this stuff is a little hard on the cognitive. That slows things down, helps you focus. All right, Kay, coach, awesome. SLPA, student. Love to see we got some students in here. Fantastic. Okay, amazing. Thanks for letting me know. So for parents, this is going to help your child come up with their ideal week. I've also done this with parents. It really helps because a lot of parents have very grandiose ideas of all the things their kids could do in the week. And when you actually sit down with them and you look at the schedule and see where that would fit in, you realize like, oh, there's actually not time for that, but there is time for this thing. For coaches, I think this is an amazing activity for two reasons. One, for you to think about like, man, if I was working the exact hours I wanted and doing the exact things I wanted, how would my week look? And then also for your students, you can sit with them and help them map out their week. And then for students, if you're a student here, which is so awesome, and any students here, are you a college student, you're a high school student, something else? Let us know in the chat box. This is a great way to start owning your time, right? Oftentimes as a student, we feel like school is happening to us, but you can actually flip that and you can do school, you can make it work for you. So I wish I'd known about this when I was in college or getting my master's degree. So I want to walk you through why I got interested in the ideal schedule. So I'm going to admit right here, this is what my calendar used to look like. This isn't my actual, I had to find a picture of it, but this is what my calendar used to look like. It was just way too blocked out, too many things. I'm a recovering over scheduler. Like, I just think that if I put it on the schedule, it will happen. And that's not the case, right? How many people put maybe more than they can accomplish at times on their calendar? Raise your hand or drop a yes in the chat box if you've been guilty of that. I know I'm pretty familiar with it. So, things started to change when I became a public school special education teacher. So this is a picture from, man, like 8 years ago or 6 years ago. But I got my master's degree in special education, and then I started working as a public school educator. So this is my counseling enriched classroom where I was working with special needs students that were transitioning back from residential treatment. And as I did that, I was doing that, and then my wife and I had our first child, and my schedule just kept getting filled in with more and more things, right? Work, family, and I realized that there's just never enough time in the day for all the things we want to do. Does anyone ever feel that way? Like, man, like where does the time go? And so as I started to think about what I wanted my life to look like, I realized like the one thing I loved help students do more than anything else was helping them stay organized, identify their goals, and make progress towards them. Right? And so what I had to do here was as I started to do that, I started a business called Executive Function Specialist, coaching students. And then I was like, you know what? I don't want to just start a business coaching students. I also want to teach people how to do this. So I started the Executive Function Coaching Academy. And then I was like, I got to keep going and build a business, co-found a business to help adults with a business partner. So as you can imagine, my schedule got pretty busy, in addition to raising my two kids and all that. And so I started to research, how do I create a schedule that I'm happy with? Because what I found I was doing was I was just adding more and more and more and always feeling like I wasn't doing enough. Has anyone had that experience or feeling where you feel like you're trying to do more and more and you're like, wait, I feel like I'm not accomplishing anything. So I started to Google it, go on YouTube, and I found this book by this guy, Eric Partaker, who he's a former like CEO or something. And then he started to he got so busy that he was just working all the time, all the time. And he actually had this experience where he was like working overtime and he was flying across Europe or something, and his arm got really cold before he got on a flight. And he called his doctor and he's like, I'm like, my arm feels numb. And the doctor was like, whatever you do, don't get on the flight. He's like, oh no, but I got to close this deal, in London. So he got on the flight and he had a heart attack on the flight where, everything shut down. Now, luckily, they landed the plane, early. He got off, and the first thing he said to I think the like, not the health person, but the nurse or something, whoever got at the airport, he was like, "Please save me. I want to be there for my kid. My kid's 5. I want to be there." And at that moment in his life, he was like, "Oh my God, I cannot just keep adding more and more things to my schedule. I have to figure out how to make things work." So he's wrote this book and he's been on a couple, podcasts, and I heard him talking and he said, the first time I meet with a CEO or a student or anyone I'm coaching, I teach them to plan out their ideal schedule first. Because if they plan their priorities, then everything will fall into place. But what most people do is they do everything except their priorities because they're like, oh, I'll get to that at the end. So I tried it out and it was a truly transformational experience. Just writing down what I wanted my week to look like and then asking myself like, what is one small step I can take this week to move more towards that schedule has changed my life. I've been doing this for about 8 months to a year. And I'll give you an example. I always wanted to start my week with yoga. Um, Today, instead of jumping into emails first thing in the morning, I went to a yoga class, right? And then after that, I did a cold plunge. For me, that really puts me in a good place. And then I scheduled in this event, right? I did some coaching calls, but it wasn't like stress, first thing Monday morning, just complete stress. And that's what I want to offer to you and your students is that if you try this system, I pretty much guarantee that you'll at least make progress towards your ideal schedule. Does that sound good to everybody? So let me ask you this. You can drop your answer in the chat box. Have you heard a student say or said any of these things recently? I have no time. Or I'm stretched too thin. Or something like, I wish I could make time. Right? And then for students, what happens when summer hits? Right? So those students who are overwhelmed, stretched to the bone, right? When summer hits, it's just, I call it like a cliff, right? They go from having all this structure, all these things they need to do, all these after school activities to a complete open-endedness. And what happens to students when that open-endedness hits? Or even us as coaches or educators, what kind of feeling do you get after a week of that complete open-endedness. Does it feel good all the time? So here's why I think summer feels hard. That absence of structure creates anxiety or restlessness, especially for neurodivergent individuals, right? Many people with neurodivergent people, they really like structure. They thrive in structure. When I did Teach for America, they gave me a clipboard and they said, write down your favorite quote on the back of this clipboard. And I wrote down, strength is born in constraint and dies in freedom. And that's a quote by Leonardo da Vinci. But I truly feel like it means a lot to me because when we have structure, then we can enjoy the structure. We don't feel like we have to figure things out all the time. So that's what you can give to your students or for yourself. Now, this is how I think a lot of us think summer will feel, right? Or we think that our as students, we think, oh, it's going to be so amazing and it's going to be perfect and I'll just do all the projects I've been dreaming of. But, if you look up memes about, free time in summer, this is one I thought was kind of funny. What I do in my free time, gaming and making memes, and then this little sliver is actually doing something productive. Now, it doesn't have to be all productivity, but productivity does create meaning, right? Or, things that we find meaningful. And so I started to Google this and look into it. And there was this thread on Reddit for teachers. It had over 335 upvotes or likes. And it was describing like, does anyone really struggle with the beginning of summer? And there was just a lot of other educators and teachers who are feeling the same way, right? Like, man, either scheduling too much or too little really leads to some negative feelings. And so these feelings that I'm talking about, I call it like the shame spiral, right? We're like, oh, I should be doing more, or I'm doing so much and I can't create any free time, right? And those negative self-talk, it creates limiting beliefs and negative feelings, right? Oh, I can't fix this. I don't know how to fix it. And then we start to avoid actually doing things, leading to more shame and more avoidance. Now, this is a little graphic that my business partner, Eric Kaufman at Upskills Specialist created, but I think it's really relevant to all of us here when we're thinking about this. But there is a solution for this, which I will be showing you soon. And that's the ideal week, right? The ideal week is special because it's not like a day by day plan that you need to know exactly what you're doing every day. So it's loose enough where you can move in that direction, but not so like overwhelming that if you don't do exactly what it is, you feel like you failed, right? So it gives us a direction to go in with our time. And this is a strategy that educators, coaches, you can use to help your students build more intentional routines for their personal and professional endeavors. Okay. Now, we have all been told a big lie, right? And this is not like Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny where it doesn't really have a negative impact. It's a good thing, right? We want to believe in stories and things like that. But there is a lie that is negatively impacting us and our students out there. And it's that the idea that you can manage time, right? We cannot manage time. Time is an immovable, like universal thing that we can't manage. However, we can be intentional about how we show up in time. Time will keep moving regardless of how we try to manage it. It's like trying to manage a wave. What are you going to do? It's going to keep crashing. So the way you can be intentional is by writing it down. Now, I tell people this in my coaching certification that just by writing something down, you are 40% more likely to achieve it. There was a study done by Dr. Gail Matthews at Dominican University, and she took a control group of people that just stated their goals and another group that wrote down what they wanted to accomplish. And the group that wrote it down was 40% more likely to achieve the thing. So I want to give you a chance to be at least 40% more likely to live your ideal schedule. Okay. And so when you plan your ideal summer week, you can see your priorities, you can see where there's free time, and then you can see how you balance your responsibilities with the things that you actually enjoy, right? It's a balance. And you're also practicing a key executive function skill, which is visualizing the outcome that you want to create. And you're tapping into your nonverbal working memory by creating this visual schedule. Now, some of you have probably not been to any of my workshops or webinars before, so I do want to walk you through my definition of executive function skills. There's a lot of different definitions, but for the work I do as a coach, an educator, I've found that this definition captures the things that I feel are most essential about executive functioning. So I call them positive skills. And positive stands for planning, your ability to plan things out. Organization, can you keep physical things organized, digital things organized? Self-awareness, so are you aware of how you're feeling, your emotions, so that you can leverage those to complete your goals or take a break if you're feeling overwhelmed? Initiation of tasks, right? Can you start doing the thing that feels difficult or overwhelming? And time management, right? Yeah, and look at me, I just said it's a lie. But can you, I should call it time intention, actually, or time, your time relationships, right? Can you relate to time in a way that you can use it intentionally? And then inhibition, can you step away from things that are not helping you or supporting you, right? Or put them off, put you two off until you complete the thing that feels challenging. And then visualizing outcomes. And that's the key skill we're going to work on today. And evaluating priorities. Of all those things you want to do, can you choose the thing that feels most valuable or is going to help you towards your long-term vision? Okay, so now that you're aware of why an ideal schedule matters and how it can help, you know what executive function skills are, who is ready to make their own schedule today? Drop in the chat box if you want to start to build this for yourself or help a student with this. Give me a yes or a thumbs up because I'm going to walk you through it right now. All right, I love it. Good stuff. So let's check this out. So Maya, can you drop in the chat box the link for the ideal schedule one more time? If you don't have that, it's going to be in the chat box in a second. And I'm going to walk you through how to build this. Okay. You can download this from the website. You can make a copy of the link. For anyone who doesn't feel comfortable making a copy of the link, I'll show you how you can download it as well. So you can also find it on downloads of the Executive Function Coaching Academy. It's the Ideal Week template. Or you can go to efspecialist.com and go to tools, printables, and then we have the ideal week schedule right here. Okay, so I'll drop it in there. That does get emailed to you, so it may take you a little bit longer. So I suggest clicking on the link. But if you're a teacher and you want to share this with your students, that's how you could find it. Okay, so let's go through the steps to building this so you feel like you have your own ideal schedule. And I'm going to kind of turn my head to my extended monitor here so I can walk you through it. So let's pop over to this. So we are on the ideal schedule sheet. So the first step, make sure you do file, make a copy. So you're not trying to put on this one. I'm not going to share this one. This is my template. So just do file, make a copy, and save it to your drive or download it as an Excel sheet. Now, before we jump into this, a couple tips on how to navigate Google Sheets or Excel. So if it looks really big, you may need to go to this 100 thing and change it to like smaller or bigger, right? If you want to be able to zoom out or zoom in, you can also just type it in. I'm going to go to 90%. Okay. So I'm going to zoom out real quick just so you can see what it looks like. So there's an example one here and the place where you can build yours. I'm going to zoom back in a bit. Okay. So I'm going to do this, but I'm curious. I may just do this for myself if no one wants to, but I'm curious. Does anyone here in the group want to serve as a, what do they say, like kind of a test here? Like I'm going to work with you to help you build it, and I'm going to model it. So drop in a yes in the chat if you're like, you know what, I would like my own schedule built out right now. Otherwise, I'll just kind of make it up here. But I'm willing to help someone build theirs out. So drop a yes in the chat if you're like, I want to be the test case. Okay. Suryakala, I love it. Okay. So Suryakala, will you unmute? Good to see you. Welcome.
You too.
I love it. This is going to be fun. And you can kind of keep it more broad if you don't want to share. Are you thinking about doing this for yourself or a student? Either one works.
Myself.
Yourself. Okay, perfect. All right. So let's talk about it, Suryakala. So tell me, like, what would you love to do on a Monday? Or like what would feel really, let's start with Monday and then we can copy it over to other days. But what's something where you're like, ooh, I've always wanted to add this in, or like what does a perfect Monday look like if you're just starting out?
I would love to see the sunrise the moment I get up.
Mm, okay. What time does that take place?
I think it's around 5:30, somewhere
Okay.
5:30 and 6.
I love it. So watch the sunrise. How long would you want to spend kind of taking that in? What would be a good amount of time for you?
Around 20 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So maybe what this is broken down into 30-minute chunks. So for example, five to this middle
Yeah, we
part.
can do 30 minutes, 5:30.
Yeah, so 5
And
to
5:30 to
5:30.
6.
Okay, to 5:30 to 6. So here's a little tip. When you write something down in here, you can press Command X and then paste it in the spot you want, Command V. You can also right click it and copy and paste like that for everybody. But I just want to show you, I want to teach you some little tech tools too. So Command C, I'm going to paste it there. Okay, so you start your day walked into sunrise. Wow, that feels empowering. What comes next, like in your ideal schedule?
I drink my water. It has to
Mhm.
be warm water with sea salt and cumin.
All right, I love it. Warm water routine. Um, let's see here. You said with sea salt and cumin?
Hmm.
I love that. Is that something you currently do or
Yeah, I
you're
do.
like, okay,
I do
cool.
it
So
every
it's
day.
I love it. All right. Now, if you write something that feels like it's extending over multiple boxes, what you can do is you can click on the box, and then there's this little thing here called text wrapping. You can click that and change that so it sits in there. So that's a nice way to kind of make it work for your schedule. Now, one thing I'm going to ask you to do as well, Surya Kala, is I ask people to categorize each thing in terms of health. It helps with your health. Wealth, it's something you're doing for your professional growth or education, or if it's focused on relationships. And the reason for this is that this helps us also see the big pattern of how we're spending our time. Maybe we're doing too much stuff for our wealth or, work, and we need to do a few more things for our health, right? Or maybe we need to invest a little more in our relationships. So this is a way to categorize it. So for these two things, or if they're different, where would you say these fall? Is it for your health, your wealth, or your relationships?
My health.
Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on this one. I'm gonna hold down Shift and then click right there. And then I'm just gonna color that in the green color, right? So I'm starting to see the patterns. So now what comes next, Suryakala?
Some light exercise, either
Mm-hmm.
yoga or stretches.
Okay. Would that come right after there?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, love it. Keep walking me through. What comes next? And
I'm
with that,
tempting to say check my phone.
okay. Now this is at so this looks like it's from 6 to 6:30. Does that feel right? Or you know,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
got it. Check your phone. Would
Yeah.
that be what you would do on your ideal day? Like, is that the time when you want to do it? Like, what would
No,
be?
I'm going by what I'm actually doing these days, and like, oh, I somehow it's like missing already.
Mm-hmm. So what would come next?
Because it's
Ma-
ideal one, I would say refresh and start cooking.
okay. All right. And then how long does that go for?
An hour and a half.
An hour and a half. So like from 7 to 8:30.
Yeah.
So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna click on that, hold down Shift, and then I'm gonna click merge cells. So this takes up a whole space. Now I kind of like my schedule to like sit in a certain way. So for example, if you see it like this, what you can do is you can also click these horizontal line. You can put it in the middle if you want, and then you can click this vertical line, kind of drop it in the middle. So that's one way you can help a student make it look the way they want it to look. Okay. Now the exercise, I'm assuming that's for health. Um, refresh and start cooking. Where does that fall into terms of like health, wealth, relationships?
Both health and relationships because I'm cooking for the family.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So maybe, yeah, maybe we throw that one into relationships since you it'd be the first thing in there. Okay.
Okay.
So what comes next in your day?
Um, Journaling, reading.
Mm, okay. And how long do you do that for? And what time to
Um,
what time?
half an hour. It would be, yeah, 9 to 9:30.
Okay, so journal slash reading.
Yeah.
Okay. And where does that fall in terms of what category?
Um, this comes under mental well-being.
So
So
like health?
health.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Good. What's next?
What's next? Definitely, I need to catch up with my email. I'm really getting antsy here.
Okay. All right. Now remember, this is your ideal schedule. So
Hmm.
if you feel that that is what you want to do, but imagine if you weren't feeling antsy, right? And you were like, "Hey, is this where you'd put it? Like if you could do it exactly when you wanted to, when would it be?"
Yeah, definitely. Because on the ideal one, 10 o'clock, I'll be starting coaching. So
Okay.
definitely need to check whether the client is going to be there or not.
Sounds good. So would that fall into kind of wealth in terms of your business and
Yeah.
work? Okay. Got it. All right. Now what's next?
10 o'clock is the time that I usually give the client time. So let's
Okay.
say there's a coaching session.
All right. And that's an hour or 50 minutes or something?
50 minutes, 50.
Okay. So we're going to merge those cells. I'm going to go to this little merge. I'm going to call this coaching session. I'm going to go back to this little vertical align and put it in the middle. And then that's for, that's work, right? That's you're building your business. So we'll call that. Okay. What comes next?
And a 20-minute break and then another coaching session.
Okay. Nice. Would the break fall under kind of that health category?
Yeah, for me to make sure that all the notes are taken and then getting ready for the, like, break the cycle and then get ready for the next client.
Okay, so note, so maybe it's a kind of combination of a little work and break. And then you have
Yeah.
another session here. So from would that be like 11:30 to 12:30 or something?
Yeah. I mean, usually if it's ideal, then it would go from 11:10 to 12 o'clock.
Okay. So maybe we say, maybe the break is just like a natural kind of break where you don't have to necessarily and this thing here is you don't have to get so granular that you're like every second is charted out. It's more like it sounds like for you, you're coaching between 10 and 12. Is that correct?
Yeah.
In your diet. So
Yeah.
maybe what we'll do here is we'll just put this together if that's okay. So that goes
Hmm.
through 12. So I'll merge that with this little button, merge. And so you do coaching sessions between 10 and 12 and give yourself a little break. So maybe we say coaching session with break between. That sound
Yeah.
good?
Yeah. Yeah. That's better.
Okay, amazing. What comes next?
12 to 1, my lunch time and break time.
Okay, cool. And I actually realized I made this a little too long. The 10 to 12 is like that. Okay, so then you do lunch and break. Okay, cool. Lunch and break. Okay. We're going to merge that. So that would be kind of for health, right? To give yourself a little break. And then what comes next?
And two more sessions.
Okay, cool. So what I'll do is I'll just take this big block since it's like tomorrow, you do two more sessions. Okay. Awesome. This looks like a pretty balanced day. What else would you add to it?
Um, in between, um, I don't know. I'm thinking of wrapping up my day and then
Mhm.
completely focus on my personal life.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so when you say wrapping up your day, maybe there's some type of transitional activity or
Yeah,
something that,
like going for a walk.
yeah, okay, so go for a walk. I love it. Um,
And then
cool.
from
Yeah.
3:30 or maybe 3 to 4 is an exercise time.
Okay, so that would be, sorry, this is military time, so I forget what it is. I think 12 plus 3 is
It's a 3
15.
to 4.
Okay, so 3 to 4. Okay, so maybe we'll just put like, we'll just merge that. We'll say go for walk slash exercise.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what happens next in your day, in your ideal day?
My gardening,
Oh, nice. Okay, so gardening for how long?
um, an hour.
Okay. All right, so we're gardening. Cool. What would you categorize that? Where would it fall?
Health.
Okay. Good, good. All right. And what comes next?
What comes next? I think in the evening, again, preparing for dinner
Mm-hmm.
and family, talking to family members, catching
Hmm.
up.
Okay. So, like, would this be like an hour or an hour and a half for dinner, or how would you drop it in
Yeah,
there?
hour and a half.
Okay. So we got dinner, family dinner.
Dinner preparation. Family dinner doesn't happen at 5 o'clock for us.
Okay. Oh, so this would be like
Yeah, dinner prep.
dinner prep plus what time does family dinner happen?
Around 8 o'clock.
Run. Okay, so you got dinner prep. Yeah, see, I'm thinking of how I make dinner, which is like chicken nuggets in the air fryer. But maybe you're a little bit more chef than me. So we'll do dinner prep here. So that's the
Because this is ideal. So
yeah,
definitely.
you're right. No, in my I think and that's something I can probably work on in my ideal world is more because I like to cook. I have not been making as much time for it.
Yeah,
So
same
this is
here.
good practice for me. So dinner prep would be like relationships, right? For your family and
Mm-hmm.
okay. And then what comes next? So now it looks like we're at what time is that?
That's
Um,
6 o'clock.
okay, 6 o'clock. So what are we looking at next?
Family time, talking,
Okay. Oh, so
catching up.
family catch up. So
Yeah.
that's kind of and is it how long does that go for?
Until dinner is over.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So where would you stop that? Would that be around 8 or 8:30 or 9?
We can stop at 8 o'clock.
Okay, 8 o'clock. All right. So family catch up. We'll put family catch up here slash dinner.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, and that relationships?
Yes.
Okay,
And
and
then
relationships and health. Um, all right, and then what else?
clean up, kitchen clean up, get
Hmm.
ready for the night.
Okay, clean up and then like bedtime routine.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be maybe health, or I guess clean up. What do you categorize that? Like relationships,
We
health?
can do relationships again
Okay,
because I'm not the only one doing it. So
good, good. And then bedtime routine would be like, uh,
winding down, reading something or
mhm.
watching.
Yeah, good, good. Okay, so that would be kind of like for health, I guess.
Yeah, I wish I can do this every day.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Okay, that was a perfect segue into how this works. So first of all, Surya Kala, thank you so much for being available for spotlight coaching here. So here's the next step, right? Is like, all right, man, this would be like, first off, how would you feel if this was like every Monday you were pretty close to doing this? You'd feel good? Okay.
Yeah, pretty productive.
Okay. So now what I would do if I were you here is I'm just going to do this as an example. I'm going to click on this top cell. I'm going to scroll down here. I imagine your other days are similar, but maybe there's some tweaks. So let's just copy it over as if like this is the normal routine for the week, for example. But maybe you adjust a few things. People can do Saturday and Sunday differently. For example, my routine for Saturday is that it's a completely shut down day. Like I don't do any work. I don't have my phone out. I turn my phone off for most Saturdays. So you can kind of think about what that looks like in your life. But let's just say you're kind of like starting here with a plan. So then you can start to, what I do is once a week, I look at this. So I created a calendar event on my calendar and I look at this schedule and I say, okay, how would I score myself on this in terms of how I did? Would I give myself an A, a B? Like, how close was I? Right. And then I ask myself, if I can only adjust one thing in my schedule for this upcoming week to make it a little bit more like this, what can I delete or add in or adjust so that I can move in this direction? Right. So let's jump back over to the slide deck so I can kind of walk you through how this looks. All right. So you've categorized what you want your week to look like according to health, wealth, relationships. Then you reflect, right? So this might be once you've mapped out this schedule, you ask yourself, like, hey, man, I've noticed that like everything in my schedule is just focused on wealth slash health. So maybe I need to add in a little bit more around relationships. Or maybe it's vice versa. Maybe everything is focused on relationships and health, but not around like your schoolwork or, when I say wealth, I'm thinking about like investing in school, or work, kind of a general category. So you can go through and ask yourself these questions. Am I spending enough time on my health? Am I investing in my future, school, work, skill building through the wealth category? Or do I have enough stuff dedicated to relationships and fun? Okay. And so all you have to do is continue to tweak your ideal schedule to figure out like how do I make it a little more tuned so it relates to my life. And lastly, you want to go through this process and not schedule every minute. They should have your students, you should go and build out your schedule on, Google Calendar or Apple Calendar. But this is a way to kind of like ask yourself, how can I move the schedule I'm doing each week in real time closer to this ideal schedule? And this is something I recommend journaling on. It could be also something you form a little mastermind group around with other students or coaches, because other people will also help you see what you can let go of or do less of or do more of. And then just continue to review that once a week if possible. Okay? And ask yourself, how can I make that tweak? So you could ask yourself, the questions I ask myself are what worked well, what didn't work well, and what's one tiny change I can make next week to move closer to my ideal schedule. Now, here's a key mantra to this process is that it's about progress, not perfection. Nobody starts with their ideal schedule, right? I started this process 8 months ago. And I was like, you know what? I want to be doing yoga in the morning. I want to be going to my CrossFit class twice a week. I want to go to a matinee on Thursdays, right? And it took me 8 months. I just saw matinees for the last 2 weeks, or like in the last 30 days, I went to two matinees on a Friday or a Thursday, right? It took me 8 months to get there, but I did it because I kept myself focused on like, how do I get to the place where I could eventually build that into my schedule? Okay. So progress, not prevention. But the other thing that really happens when you do this with yourself or with your students is they start to develop the ability to time block, to self evaluate, to build habits, to think about things they can let go of. And research shows, so this is the research of John Hattie. He wrote the book Visible Learning, where he found the biggest impact factors that impact student achievement. He found that self-reported grades, when students self-evaluate themselves, whether it's in a class or with something like this, has a huge impact because they identify what's working, what's not working, and what do I need to change. Instead of being told what they need to change, they're self-reporting and figuring it out. The other big tweak here is the conceptual change program, right? And the conceptual change program is when you help students identify a concept that might be holding them back, right? So when we build a schedule on Google Calendar or Apple Calendar and we don't do it, we're like, I'm a failure. I give up. Calendars don't work. But this tool, building the ideal schedule, it helps you identify a vision, a goal, right? A visual of what you want to achieve and move in that direction. All right. So what I want you to do is I want you to drop in the chat box now. If you're going to make this schedule for yourself this summer or help your students make it, what's one thing you want to commit to putting in your schedule this summer that would bring you, whether it's satisfaction, joy, be meaningful to you? What's one thing that would feel meaningful for you to drop in your schedule this summer? So drop in the chat box. I'm really curious to know what are people desiring or wanting. Angela, I love it. More family activities. Fantastic. Early morning writing or journaling practices. Love it. On that note, Angela, so one thing I did was I knew I wanted to do game time with my kids. So I built in game time, I think on Thursday evenings, where we play like, what is it called? Connect Four or Go Fish or something like that. And I don't think I would have done it as easily, or I would have found a reason to do work or something else if I hadn't put it into here. Um, so something like that. Um, Katrina said more coffee dates with friends. Love that. Yeah. Build in that time, right? Make it a priority. Kay said less youth sports practices. Yeah, that can be overwhelming. So yeah, in your ideal schedule, how many do you do, right? Maybe you do a few, but not all of them or one of them. More quality, unstructured family time. Amazing. Surya Kala shared plan my coaching workshops. Love it. I love all these ideas people are sharing. So it is possible, right? Your schedule can be yours. You can create this, but you do have to map it out. It's so essential for us as learners, as people. So let's jump back over to the slide deck. So I want to thank everybody for joining today. Does anyone have any questions or about this? And if you are planning on logging out, I know this webinar ends in a few minutes. Before you log out, what I'd like you to do is drop in the chat box, what was your most valuable takeaway? Because once you register that in your brain and you kind of put it in there, it's going to help you take this learning and apply it to your own life. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, what was your most valuable takeaway before you log out? Love it, Valerie. Valerie shared time with friends. Yeah, build that in. Getting more organized. Katrina shared weekly self-assessment and tweak will help me keep me accountable. Yeah. And actually, let me share with people one thing since I got you here about how to self-assess. So I usually only share this with like I don't want to overwhelm people, but what I've created in my life is what I call it's my CEO dashboard, right? My executive function dashboard. And so I have this ideal week, right? This is the template. But then what I do is I also at the end of the week I rank, I give myself a score from 1 through 5 about how I did in each of those categories, right? And then I answer a couple questions. What was the high score? What was the low score? What can I do next week to address the weaker areas? And so this also helps you start to see patterns around your behavior like, oh man, I'm great in my mission, but I'm not really investing as much as I'd like in my hobbies or whatever it might be, as much time with my friends. So it allows you to see a pattern in your behavior over time. So this worksheet would probably be overwhelming to most people. It has a lot of tools I use in my own life, but I'm going to drop it in the chat box in case it's helpful because people have asked me like, man, how do you stay organized with all the things you're working on? I plan to do a workshop on this dashboard down the road, or maybe just work on the pieces one piece at a time. But I will share this. So, for example, if you notice like, oh, I'm doing a lot for health and wealth, but nothing for relationships, you can add in what I call a 90-day goal. So you can write in something that you want to do for that area, and then what's one step you can take. So it starts to give you kind of a bigger picture vision of what you're working on, where the areas for growth are, and how to kind of stay reflecting so you're creating progress over time. All right. Well, first off, I just want to thank everybody for joining today. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to do this. I hope it yields some value for you now and into the future. Um, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we will wrap up there. And thank you for coming today.
Thanks so much, Sean. Have a great week.
You're very welcome. Good to see you. Yeah, have a great week too. All right,
Thanks.
everybody. We'll wrap up there. Have a great rest of your week. Bye now.